The glass shattered before anyone saw him move. 1 second, Marcus Seo's personal chef had Zara pinned against the marble kitchen counter, his hand raised, his ring already splitting the skin above her cheekbone. The next second, the chef was on the floor with a broken wine glass beside his head and Marcus Seo's hand wrapped around the man's collar like a vice. The entire kitchen staff froze. Nobody breathed. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He never did. That was the terrifying part, the way he spoke in that low, flat tone that somehow cut louder than screaming. "Touch her again," he said, his dark eyes locked on the man trembling beneath him, "and your family disappears. Not you. Your family. They'll never find the bodies because there won't be any." He released the chef the way someone drops a piece of trash. Then he turned and looked at Zara. Not at her bleeding face. Not at the broken glass. He looked at her, directly, deliberately, and something passed across his expression that none of his staff had ever seen before. Something that wasn't power or anger or calculation. It looked almost like recognition. "Get her cleaned up," he told his head of security, Jean, without breaking eye contact with Zara. "And get that man off my island by tonight." He walked out. Zara pressed the back of her hand to her cheek and stared at the door he'd disappeared through. Her pulse was hammering. But not from fear. She'd been on this island for 6 weeks. She'd come here with a plan. She'd come here knowing exactly what Marcus Seo was, what his family had done, what blood was on their hands. She had told herself she could do this coldly, mechanically, without feeling anything. She had not planned on this. 3 months earlier, Zara Han had been sitting in a dim apartment in Seoul, staring at a photograph of her father. He was laughing in the picture. He always laughed in photographs, wide, open, the kind of laugh that filled a room. He had been an accountant. A quiet, careful, honest man who had made one mistake. He had kept records he wasn't supposed to keep, and he had refused to destroy them when the Seo family asked him to. He died in a car accident 3 weeks later. Her mother disappeared 6 months after that. The records vanished. The case went cold. Zara spent 4 years building a new life on top of her grief, studying, working, keeping her head down. But the anger never left. It just changed shape, became sharper, more patient, more precise. When she found out that the Seo family's private island needed domestic staff and that the screening process could be bypassed with the right forged documents, she didn't hesitate. She arrived on Isla Seo with one carry-on bag, a carefully constructed identity, and a hidden drive containing every scrap of evidence she'd spent 4 years collecting. The island was breathtaking and terrible, a fortress disguised as a paradise. White stone buildings rising out of lush green, surrounded by water on every side. Helicopters came and went. Suited men with earpieces moved through the gardens like shadows. At the center of all of it was Marcus Seo, 38 years old, head of the family since his father's stroke, and the most feared man in the Korean criminal underworld. Zara had expected a monster. She had not expected someone who read in the garden every morning before sunrise. She had not expected someone who knew every employee's name and used it. She had not expected the way he looked at the ocean sometimes, like a man who was tired of being exactly who he was. She filed those observations away and kept her head down. That was the plan. Observe. Gather. Destroy. She was very good at keeping to the plan. Right up until the moment Marcus Seo demolished it without even trying. It started small. 2 weeks in, she was carrying linens down the east corridor when one of Marcus's younger cousins, Dae-young, stopped her. He was 26, drunk at 11 in the morning, and had the particular cruelty that comes from growing up powerful and never being told no. "You're new," he said, blocking her path. "Yes, sir. Too pretty to be folding sheets." He reached out and touched her jaw. She went very still. She could have handled Dae-young. She had trained for exactly this kind of situation, how to defuse, how to disappear, how to survive without drawing attention. But before she could do anything, she heard footsteps and looked up to find Marcus Seo standing at the end of the hallway, watching them. His eyes moved from his cousin's hand on her face to Zara's expression. "Dae-young," he said quietly. One word. That was all. His cousin dropped his hand immediately and stepped back, laughing nervously. "Just talking, Hyung. Just. Go sleep it off." Dae-young went. Marcus looked at Zara for a moment longer than necessary, then walked away without a word. That evening, she was assigned to a different corridor, one with no access to the family's private quarters. On the surface it looked like a demotion. But Jean, the head of security, told her quietly that Mr. Seo had personally requested the reassignment. Zara lay awake that night trying to understand what game was being played. The answer she kept arriving at was the most dangerous one, maybe no game at all. By week 4, she had a problem. She was supposed to be invisible, blending in, gathering information, waiting for the right moment to access the server room where the financial records were stored. Instead, Marcus Seo kept noticing her. Not in a predatory way. That she could have handled. This was different. He noticed the things she did, the way she reorganized the library's Korean literature section by era rather than alphabetically without being asked. The way she stayed an extra hour to help an elderly housekeeper who was struggling with her back. The way she always left a glass of water on his desk when she cleaned his study, because she'd noticed he never remembered to drink in the mornings. One morning she arrived to clean the study and found a book sitting on top of the usual stack. A collection of poetry. A small note, not a card, just a piece of paper torn from a notebook, reading, "In case the shelves here are as badly organized as the library was." She stared at it for a long time. She put the book on the shelf and didn't allow herself to feel anything about it for the rest of the day. The kitchen incident changed everything. After Marcus had the chef removed, Zara became a subject of intense interest among the island staff and, more dangerously, among the family members who were visiting for the annual Seo gathering. There were 12 of them on the island, cousins, uncles, allied business partners, and every one of them watched Marcus's reaction with calculating eyes. She caught pieces of conversation she wasn't meant to hear. "He's compromised himself. A maid, of all. It's weakness. His father would have. We should look into who she actually is." That last one froze her blood. She had 2 days, maybe 3, before someone started pulling threads. Her documents were good but not bulletproof. If the family's intelligence contacts ran a deep search, her real identity would surface, and everything would collapse. She needed to move up the timeline. That night, she was in the server room. She had studied the access patterns for weeks. She knew which guard took a 3-minute bathroom break at 11:40. She knew the camera rotation. She was good at this, better than anyone on this island suspected a maid could be. She plugged in the drive. The files downloaded in 90 seconds. She was back in her room in 4 minutes. She sat on the edge of her bed with the drive in her hand and tried to feel triumphant. All she felt was sick. The next morning, Marcus asked her to bring coffee to the terrace. She almost said she was unwell and sent someone else. Instead she went, because running would look suspicious and because, and she hated herself for this, she wanted to see his face one more time before everything ended. He was sitting with his back to the ocean, reading documents. He looked up when she set the coffee down and studied her the way he sometimes did, like she was a problem he genuinely wanted to understand rather than simply solve. "You're afraid of something," he said. She kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Yes you do." He leaned back. "You've been afraid since you arrived. But this morning it's different. This morning you're afraid of a decision." Her heart was hammering. "I'm just tired. Zara." He said her name like it meant something. "I've been running a family built on knowing when people are lying. I'm not asking because I want to catch you. I'm asking because," he paused, and something shifted in his face. I don't know why I'm asking. She looked at him then. Really looked. And the plan, the careful iron structure she had built over 4 years, developed its first crack. I knew your father, Marcus said quietly. The world tilted. Not well. He processed accounts for us when I was young, before my uncle took over that side of operations. I remember him because he was the only person who ever told my father no and lived to tell about it. He looked at the ocean. He said some numbers weren't worth the stain. Zara's voice came out barely above a whisper. What happened to him? Marcus met her eyes. My uncle happened to him. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled to the breaking point. I spent 5 years trying to build a case against my uncle, Marcus continued. He died of a heart attack before I could file it. I've spent the 3 years since trying to decide whether the family he built is worth saving. He picked up his coffee. You have a drive, don't you? It wasn't a question. I've known since the server room. Jean saw you on a camera I never told the staff about. He set the cup down carefully. I haven't done anything with that information yet. Zara stood completely still. Tell me why, he said. Tell me what you came here to do. And she did. She told him everything, her father, her mother, the 4 years, the evidence, the plan. She told him because she was exhausted from carrying it alone and because something about the way he listened made her feel, for the first time in years, like she was allowed to put it down. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. The evidence on that drive, he finally said. Does it implicate me? Yes, she said honestly. Some of it. He nodded slowly. How much? Enough. Another silence. Then you should use it, he said. She didn't have time to respond. Jean appeared in the terrace doorway, his face stripped of its usual calm. We have a problem, he said. Dae-young went to the mainland last night. He's coming back with people. Marcus stood up. He found something on the girl, he asked. Her real name. Her father. All of it. Jean looked at Zara with an expression that was not unkind. He's telling the family she's here to destroy them. He's calling a vote to have her removed. Removed. They both knew what that word meant. Marcus straightened his jacket. How long? 2 hours. Maybe less. He turned to Zara. Go to the East Dock. There's a boat. Jean will take you to the mainland. She stared at him. And the drive? Keep it. Marcus. It was the first time she'd used his name. They both noticed it. Keep it, he said again, softer. Do what you came here to do. They'll punish you for this, she said. Your family. My family, he said quietly, has been making me choose between them and my conscience for 15 years. He looked at her directly. I'm tired of choosing wrong. She got to the door. She stopped. She turned back. The evidence against you specifically, she said. It's 3 transactions from 2019. You were 19. Your uncle's signature is on 2 of them. He was looking at her. I noticed that when I first reviewed it, she said. I was going to include it anyway because I told myself it didn't matter. She held up the drive. It matters. She opened the drive's encrypted folder on her phone, found the 3 files, and deleted them in front of him. He didn't say anything. Not for you, she said. For what you just did. She pocketed the phone. There's still enough on here to take down every other person who destroyed my family. That's what I came for. Zara. I know. She was already moving. I know. She was almost at the door when she heard him say it, low, almost to himself, like a man confessing something he hadn't meant to admit out loud. You're the first person who saw me. Not my behavior. Me. She paused in the doorway. She didn't turn around, because if she turned around she wasn't sure she'd leave. I know, she said again, quietly. That's why I'm not taking you down with the rest of them. She left on the boat with Jean. Behind her, the island erupted into the kind of political chaos that Marcus Seo had been quietly preparing for, the dismantling of the old order, the excision of the corrupt branches of his family's empire. Dae-young arrived to find his allies arrested. The vote he'd called never happened. 3 weeks later, a sealed package of financial evidence arrived at the Seoul Financial Crimes Unit. No sender address. But a prosecutor who'd been investigating the Seo family for 7 years would later describe the contents as the most comprehensive financial crime documentation she had ever received. Zara watched the news from a small apartment in Busan. She had taken a job at a coastal library. She reorganized the Korean literature section by era. She drank coffee in the mornings and finally slept through the night. She did not contact Marcus Seo. She thought about him every day. She was not sure what that meant yet. She thought maybe she didn't need to know right now. She thought maybe, for the first time in 4 years, she had enough space inside herself to let something be unresolved without it destroying her. On the 32nd day after leaving the island, she opened her door to find a torn piece of notebook paper on her welcome mat. No name. No address. Just the title of a poetry collection she hadn't read yet, and a single line below it. The library here is terribly organized. She stood in her doorway for a long time. Then, very slowly, she smiled.